Ocarina of Time is considered to be not only the absolute best game in the Zelda franchise, but also one of the best games of all time. Now, while it's not my personal favorite Zelda game, I still think it's an absolutely amazing game. By far the best part of this game, in my opinion, is the absolutely stellar temple roster. Personally, I believe that the adult temple stretch of the game has some of the best temples in the entire franchise. The child temples, on the other hand, I'm kidding to an extent, because while the adult temples are far better than the child ones, they're still decent for the most part. If you haven't seen one of my temple by temple analysis videos before, let me inform you on how things roll around here. I'll go over everything that I find important to talk about inside of each individual temple, along with the lead up to it. In a little bit of a switch up from previous episodes in the series, I won't be putting the temples on a tier list, but instead, I'll give each temple a letter grade after I've gone over them. Eventually, I want to do a video ranking every 3D Zelda dungeon, and I don't want to give away the entire list right there. I'll be taking a look at inside the Great Deku Tree, Dodongo's Cavern, inside Jabu-Jabu's belly, and I'll even be looking at the bottom of the well mini dungeon. I'm sorry that it took me over 7 months to even get this video out, but without any further delay, let's get right into the child dungeons of Ocarina of Time, ranked and analyzed. While Breath of the Wild has, in my opinion, the best opening in all of Zelda, Ocarina of Time is in a super close second. The game starts out in the Kokiri Forest when the Great Deku Tree sends Navi the fairy to go be with Link. Once she wakes the sleepy boy up, Navi tells him that the Great Deku Tree has summoned him and to report to him right away. Well, that is what I would do if this stupid pointy-eared idiot wasn't standing in my way. Yes, the Great Mido prevents Link from seeing the Great Deku Tree unless he has a sword and a shield. While I understand Mido's worry for the safety of his bestest friend, the fate of the world lies in Link's hands, and you're preventing him from helping out. What the heck, Mido? The Kokiri Forest is one of my favorite locations in all of Zelda, and every time I enter this place I get hit with a wave of nostalgia, which is super weird because I didn't grow up playing this game. In order to get a sword and shield, there's a few things we have to do. First off, there's getting the Kokiri sword. On an elevated area near a bunch of fences, there's a crawl space that takes you into a maze-like area. It's super tiny, and there's a giant rolling boulder that defies the laws of physics. In the top left corner of the area, there's a chest which contains the Kokiri sword. While exploring Kokiri Forest, you also need to get 40 rupees in order to get the Deku shield from the shop. There's a surprising amount of creativity with these rupee placements, and the game does a great job with its secrets. Take jumping from platform to platform across the water, for example. If you jump across them, you'll get 5 rupees, which I think is a fun little secret that's seen throughout the game in many different forms. Anyways, once we get 40 rupees and buy the Deku shield, we're off to see the Great Deku Tree. Before you get to him, there's a couple of Deku Babas that you can take out and also practice your combat on. There is, however, some unfortunate news, as once you get to the Great Deku Tree, he tells Link that he's been cursed and he needs Link's assistance. He opens up his mouth, and when entered, we arrive at the first temple in the game, inside the Deku Tree. Usually I start with talking about the music of each temple, but honestly, each of the temples don't really have memorable music. They're more just ambient background noises than actual music, but I'll still look at each temple's theme. For inside the Deku Tree, there's only one instrument being used here, being a synthetic panpipe. It gives off vibes of being in nature while also feeling ominous. One of the best things about this temple, in my opinion, is how much it feels like a tree with its design. The first room in the temple is very tall, and there's even a hole in the center that goes even deeper, but it's covered by a spiderweb. Well, there's nowhere to go but up, and luckily for Link, there's a ladder he can climb to get to a new floor. Up here is our very first chest in the temple, which contains our patented dungeon map. There's also some vines that we could climb up to get to another floor, but there's some skull waltulas blocking the way. If you do a bit more hardcore parkour, you can get to a door that leads Link to a room with a Deku scrub. After you absolutely body him with an epic deflect, he immediately gives up and gives you an awesome tip that definitely no one knows about at all. Past him is a room where there's another chest. After even more epic jumps, we reach the chest and get the item of this dungeon, the fairy slingshot. Now with the fairy slingshot, we're able to keep on climbing by taking the vines in the main room. Up here is the top floor, and while we could technically proceed through the dungeon, there's an extra room on this top floor. There's a button in here that makes platforms rise out of the floor, and you can jump across them to get to multiple chests. This is also the first instance of gold Skulltulas in the game. These are creatures that drop gold Skulltula tokens when defeated, and you can even get some cool rewards by collecting them. While they're cool collectibles, I've never 100%ed the game, so they're not going to have that much of an effect on the temple's grades. Anyways, on the other side of the room in this big chest, we obtain the compass, which allows us to see chests on the map. It doesn't come in handy too much for these temples, but it's still a decently useful item to have. I also like this simple puzzle when you're trying to leave the room. The door is locked, and you have to light up a torch in order to open up the door. I think it's a solid introduction to this type of puzzle, which we'll see quite a bit throughout the game. With that out of the way, we can head back to the main room and jump from the top floor through the spiderweb to get to the lower levels of the temple. Immediately, there's a couple of gold Skulltula tokens to get, but if we want to progress through the temple, we need to press this button in order to light a flame. With the use of the Deku stick, we can bring the flame on over to a door that's blocked by a web to advance through. In here is another Deku Scrub that can be defeated the same way as the other one, but this time he actually gives us a useful tip. He tells us the only way to beat his brothers up ahead is by defeating them in a certain order, being 2, 3, 1, 23 is number 1. Yeah, you're dang right he is. There's also the first use of eye switches that can be triggered by using Link's slingshot or the bow in the later half of the game. The next room features a tutorial on how to dive, with there being a switch underwater you need to hit in order to progress. On the other side, there's a block that you need to push into position, and after packing out a Skulltula, you can head over to the next room. This is a nothing room with a couple of Deku Babas and another fire puzzle, which is always fun. The next room houses another fire puzzle, but this time we get to burn a web, and instead of a door leading to the next area, there's a crawl space. This leads back into the first room of the bottom floor, where we can now push a block so that the area is accessible if we fall. It also allows Link to light this web on fire and jump down to the final floor. This is the room where we have to defeat Deku Scrubs in the Michael Jordan order. Once they're out of the way, the door to the boss room opens. While at first there's nothing going on in here, if you look up at the ceiling, you'll spot the boss of this temple, Goma. I know that this is a starter temple, but my goodness, this boss fight kinda blows. Goma can't be damaged unless she's stunned by a slingshot. You can actually one-cycle this boss with Deku Sticks, which just makes her even worse. I hate that this dungeon ends on a sour note, but the rest of the temple is still pretty solid. Once Goma is defeated, we collect our first heart container and then teleport back outside. Unfortunately, defeating Goma doesn't fully cure the Great Deku Tree, but before he dies, he tells Link all about Ganondorf along with the creation of the Triforce. He tells Link never to let the Triforce in the hands of Ganon, and before he passes on, he grants Link with the Kokiri's Emerald. Overall, this is a pretty good first dungeon. By far the worst part about it is the ending, and a lot of the temple is pretty basic. Still though, I think it'll get a solid B. It does a pretty good job introducing a bunch of mechanics to the player, and it has a decently sad ending. But now it's time to leave Kokiri Forest, but before we do, Saria gives Link the Fairy Ocarina, which is gonna come in handy. I know that I said I would cover the lead up to each of the temples, but this section is super long, so I'll just go over some of the highlights. Long Field, Hyrule Castle, get a chicken, wake up Talon, avoid some guards, meet Zelda, get her letter, learn Zelda's lullaby, go to Kakariko Village, show guard the letter, and bang, we're on the Death Mountain Trail. Yeah, I did other things too, like getting 2 bottles, the Sun Song, and Epona Song, but the list was getting way too long, so I stopped there. We take the trail all the way up to Goron City, and this is just one of my favorite locations in this game. Take a shot every time I say that sentence. The Goron are always a joy to interact with, and there's quite a few things to do here. For us though, we have to play Zelda's Lullaby in front of this door. Inside is the leader of the Goron, Darunia, but he's not a happy camper. Well, there's only one way to brighten his spirits, and I think I know just the thing he needs. In the city, there's a familiar tune playing behind some boulders that can be blown up. This pathway takes you to the Lost Woods, which just makes no sense to me at all. If you follow the sound of Saria's song, you'll eventually come across her. She teaches Link Saria's song, and with that we can head on back to Darunia. Using Saria's song, we get to watch one of my absolutely favorite scenes from this game while Darunia busts it down. This song makes him like Link a whole lot more than at first, and he gives Link the Goron bracelet, which allows him to lift heavier objects. He also tells Link that if he wants the Goron ruby, he needs to go piece up the Dodongos in Dodongo's Cavern. Luckily for him, now that we have the Goron bracelet, we can do just that by throwing one of these bomb flowers next to a giant boulder blocking the cave. When you enter, there's another bombable wall, which opens up the way to Dodongo's Cavern. Just like inside the Deku Tree, the Dodongo's Cavern theme is very light on instrumentation. However, unlike the Deku Tree theme, this one just kinda sucks. Like, a lot actually. It does honestly fit with the temple, but it's just random noises. There is this one sound that I like to think is a fire geyser popping out, and also a growl of what I think is meant to be a Dodongo. I don't really think this is a good theme at all, and it's used in other locations, with some making sense and others not. This right here is the main room, and we'll make our way back here quite a few times throughout our time here. On the left side, there are multiple bombable walls, with one having a chest with the dungeon map, and one that has a business scrub. The other side has more walls to blow up, but this time we get to continue through the main path. There's a long hallway with a bunch of baby Dodongos scattered everywhere. You can even use one of them to blow up a wall and enter a secret room with a gold Skulltula inside. If you keep on keeping on through the hallway, you'll come across some statues that you need to push onto a button. This opens up a door to a mini hallway, which then leads to our first mini boss of the dungeon. I guess I should say mini bosses, cause we gotta fight 2 Lizalfos. They're decently fun to fight, but honestly this fight drags on a bit too much for me. After you get one of the Lizalfos to half health, the other one tags in. It takes the other Lizalfo a bit to even come over to Link, and that kinda slows down the pace of the fight. Once they're dead, a door opens up and it takes us to a room with another lighting torch puzzle. This room also marks the first appearance of normal Dodongos, but honestly for a temple called Dodongo's Cavern, I don't think there's nearly enough Dodongos here. Once the torch lighting puzzle is complete, another door opens, with this one leading to a button that unlocks a door on the other side of the main room. I've always loved this room because we're about to see a whole lot of explosions. If you place a bomb flower in this exact spot, it blows up all the other bomb flowers, allowing a staircase to be created. I got a little carried away and almost forgot to mention that there's a chest with a compass in here as well. My bad. Once you reach the top of the staircase, you'll find a gold Skulltula token along with a door to a new room. In here are some fire keys that can be super annoying if you're not careful. The main goal here though is once again to press another button to unlock a door. Past that, we come across a bridge that goes across the main room to the other side where there's a very claustrophobic room. There's a bunch of moving spikes lurking around corners, so we have to be careful while walking around. I absolutely love the way that you get out of here. You need to take this bomb flower and perfectly throw it at this wall to open up an entrance. It's super satisfying to perform, and we actually get a new puzzle after this. With our trusty slingshot, we can shoot this eye and make the flame blocking our path disappear. Not a hard puzzle, but hey, at least it's something different. What's not different though is that through another hallway, we get to fight the exact same mini-boss as before, but don't worry, this time the arena is a little bit different. Yeah, I just think this is some lazy design. I mean, the temple is called Dodongo's Cavern. You're telling me we couldn't have maybe gotten a couple more Dodongos as mini-bosses? After defeating laziness and doing another one of those eye puzzles, we finally come across a chest containing the item of this dungeon, the bomb bag. Bombs are a staple of the franchise, and it's just so nice to finally be able to pull one out on a whim. A little past the chest is a button which triggers a platform that allows for you to get back up here in case you fall down. Next up though is such an amazing puzzle. On this bridge, there's two separate openings that you need to drop bombs through. When they blow up, the eyes of the skull light up, and after you do both of them, the mouth opens to reveal even more of the temple to explore. In a dungeon filled with laziness, this part is super creative. Once you enter the door in the skull, which is a super weird sentence to say, you're met with more fire keys and a hole in the middle of the room. There's nothing in here, so onward through the hallway we go. At the end is a room with a bunch of fire keys and some blocks to move around. Eventually though, you'll find a block that we can move back into that hole in the center of the room. With that painstaking process done, a door opens to let us into the boss room. We don't immediately get to fight the bosses, first we need to bomb the floor in the middle of the room. Link drops right into the boss arena and he's met with the boss of Dodongo's Cavern, King Dodongo. Just like inside the Great Deku Tree though, this boss kinda sucks a lot. In order to defeat him, you have to chuck bombs into his mouth when he opens it. That stuns him and then you get to wail on him. There's a little grace period before you can attack him again where he rolls around, but he's not hard to avoid at all. At the end of the day, this boss feels more like a mini-boss and it just feels like you're fighting a normal Dodongo. Anyway, once he's defeated, we grab our heart container and teleport right outside Dodongo's Cavern. Darunia shows up out of the blue, thanking Link for a job well done, and we obtain the Goron Ruby. I would say now it's time to head to the next location, but Link's got his hands a little full. I don't think I find this temple nearly as well made as inside the Deku Tree. It does still have some redeeming qualities with a couple cool puzzles and the fact that we get to use bombs. I wish I could give it a higher grade, but for now it's going to get a C. This is a temple I want to like a whole lot more, but I just can't bring myself to overlook its massive faults. Before we head to the next temple, we have to go find two great fairies. There's one at the top of Death Mountain which gives us a magic meter and an upgraded spin attack, and another one all the way back at Hyrule Castle, and she gives you Din's Fire, which is pretty useful. Well, with those two things out of the way, we need to follow this river to arrive at Zora's River. We get a nice talking to from everyone's favorite owl. We also get to meet the magic bean salesman. Throughout Zora's River, there are a few different collectibles to get, like gold Skulltula tokens, and using this trusty little cuckoo, we can get 2 pieces of heart. At the end of the river though is a waterfall, and if we play Zelda's Lullaby, it splits open and we can enter Zora's Domain. This is one of my favorite locations in this game. From the music to the puzzles in here, there's a lot to love. First things first though, we have to get this silver scale from this Zora right next to the king. If you talk to him, he'll offer a little diving minigame where you have to collect all the rupees he throws under a time limit. It's not too hard, and once you get all the rupees, he'll give you the silver scale which allows you to dive deeper in water. With our new diving capabilities, we can access Lake Hylia via a shortcut in Zora's Domain. In the lake, we can actually find a bottle that has a note in it. It's from Ruto of the Zoras, and she pleads for help as she's been swallowed by Jabu-Jabu. We can take the letter back to the king, where he ever so hastily lets us see Jabu-Jabu. In order to get inside of Jabu-Jabu though, we need to grab a fish which can be found in Zora's Domain, or you can just buy one from the shop if you're super rich. Plop that fish right in front of the Lord and you'll unfortunately enter Jabu-Jabu's belly. I'm just gonna immediately come out and say that this is one of my least favorite dungeons of all time. But why is that, Jickbean, you might ask? Well, let me take you on a journey through this stupid fish's stomach. Right off the bat, we're greeted by a couple of Octoroks, but they can just be avoided entirely by hitting this dangly thing in the back of his throat to open a door. It leads to a room that won't come into play until later, and then through the next door we find Princess Ruto. She acts like such a moody teenager, saying that she would never ask for saving, and she gets her comeuppance when she falls through a random hole. Sadly, we have to follow her, and after a bit of convincing, she allows Link to carry her to safety. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to talk about the music for this one, and while it's not as bad as Dodongo's Cavern, it still sucks. This is by far the most instrumentation we've seen, and I actually like the percussion in the background quite a bit. What I don't like is the gobblegut sounding noise, but I do still think it fits with the dungeon super well. Anyways, we can now transport the princess, and all of a sudden this temple turns into an escort quest. We take her down a hallway where we come across a gap that we can just throw this chick right across. Seriously though, how does she float through the air? For Link to get over there, he has to hit a button which somehow makes water appear. I really don't know how the logistics of this dungeon work. We can continue to hit another dangly thing, kill an Octorok, and take this platform right back up to where we found Princess Ruto before. With Princess Ruto, we can enter into a new room where there's a bunch of different buttons that need to be held down in order to enter other rooms. In the first of these rooms, there's a bunch of stingers, and when all of them are eliminated, a chest spawns in the middle of the room containing the item of the dungeon, the boomerang. This allows us to clear out some other rooms, starting with a red dangly thing. It's not too hard to battle, and after it's been destroyed, a chest spawns with the dungeon map. It feels really weird getting the dungeon map after getting the item, and I can't think of another time where an instance like this happens. There's also another completely optional room with a bunch of bubbles. If you take out all of the bubbles, a chest appears out of thin air and gives us the compass. For the main path though, we can enter through another door to find a blue dangly thing and take it out the same way as the red one. This opens up the path to our final dangly thing, and after getting rid of that one, a pathway opens up in what I'm going to call the holy room because there's a lot of holes. If we jump down a certain hole, we come across some gold Skulltula tokens and a door where Ruto points out the Zora Sapphire and tells Link to throw her to it. We throw her onto a platform and all seems well until the platform starts to rise up with Ruto on it. When the platform comes back down, instead of Princess Ruto, a big Octo comes down for a mini boss fight. All you have to do to beat him is run around in circles until you catch up with him, and then you can throw a boomerang at him to stun him. With him stunned, you can wail on the big Octo with your sword. I don't find this fight particularly fun, and sometimes it can even be a bit finicky, but eventually he gets defeated and we can take the platform up, which leads to a hallway with a door. Through the door are some tentacle looking things that can be platformed across if hit with a boomerang. After platforming across those and taking the door at the end, we come across a floating platform that when stepped on lowers into that room I said would become useful later. This platform allows us to bring a box on over to a button which opens up the door to the final room before the main boss. There's a gold Skulltula on these vines that you need to climb up in order to hit a switch which opens the final door. Now I know I've talked a lot of crap about this temple, but this boss right here is the one saving grace. Meet Baronade, also known as by far the best child boss in the game. At first you have to cut down his connection to Jabu-Jabu, but after that he's able to roam around freely and even uses jellyfish as a shield. The fight is also a huge step up in terms of difficulty. This game really isn't that hard, but I'm not gonna lie, I almost died in this fight. Baronade makes Goma and King Dodongo look like child's play. Once he's defeated, however, we grab our heart container along with the princess and head out of this stupid fish. When we get out of Jabu-Jabu, Ruto starts getting very flirty with Link. I mean heck, this girl even tries to marry the kid. Lady, you two are way too young to even be thinking about marrying, and come on, that's gotta be against the Hyrule law. She offers a reward, and of course, Link wants the Zora Sapphire, and she gives it to her future husband to end our journey in Zora Country. Now while this is by far the worst temple in the entire game, that boss fight is so amazing. It's the only thing that saves this temple from getting an F. I really want to give it an F, but I just have to give it a D because Baronade is so much fun. Don't get me wrong, it's a low D, and everything else in the temple sucks, but Baronade is such a fun and well-designed boss. And now we move on to the bottom of the well, which takes place right before the Shadow Temple. In order to even get to the bottom of the well in the first place, we have to learn the Song of Storms. To do that though, we need to go into the Kakariko Windmill as Adult Link and talk to the Phonograph Man, as he's called in this game, even though he's Goober Guru in Majora's Mask, but whatever. He'll tell the story about how some kid screwed up the windmill 7 years ago with the Song of Storms, and if you whip out the Ocarina, he'll teach it to you. Now we have to come back here as young Link and play the Song of Storms in order to drain the well. I don't know if I'm stupid or something, but I really don't understand how this works. If anything, I feel like the well should overflow, but it's just a game. I think I'll live. Once you climb down the well, you'll enter the bottom of the well and are met with a crawl space. On the other side, we keep descending through the well, eventually coming to a Skulltula to fight. It seems like we met a dead end, but if you walk through this wall, we enter the main portion of the mini-dungeon. Now I know that the previous two dungeon themes were absolute buns, but the bottom of the well theme is the definition of the perfect atmosphere. It's almost identical to the Shadow Temple theme, which makes sense because that's the temple immediately after this one, and my goodness, it adds aura to each of these dungeons. There's all sorts of creepy noises, from ethereal screams to what I think is a harpsichord coming out of nowhere. The main backing part of the theme though is some deep and creepy voice sound that's also for some reason seen in the Fire Temple, which I've never been a fan of. Okay, back to the dungeon, and if we make our way to the back, there's a Triforce on the bottom, so you know what song we gotta play. After playing Zelda's Lullaby, the water starts to drain again, and once again I question the logistics of the water disappearing. With the water drained, we can head back to the entrance and find a new crawl space to go through. On the other side, there's a hallway, and at the end of the hallway is the door that leads into the boss of this mini dungeon. This is by far the creepiest part of the entire game so far. There's a bunch of pale hands sticking out of the ground, and if you get grabbed by one, the dead hand boss pops up out of the floor. I love the design of the dead hand, but the boss itself isn't the best. I just really don't like when he disappears after a bit. You have to go and get grabbed by the hand again. Once the dead hand is defeated though, a chest spawns in containing the Lens of Truth. This item is the whole reason we come down here in the first place, because it's a vital item used in the Shadow Temple. And that's all the bottom of the well has to offer. There's not a whole lot to the bottom of the well, and if you know what you're doing, you'll spend like 5 minutes in here max. I'm kinda conflicted on the grade here because this isn't supposed to be some big temple, it's just a little challenge. I think it does its job really well, and it's one of the creepiest locations in the game. I'm gonna give it a C because while I do like it, it's a mini dungeon and it doesn't compare to other temples in the franchise. Well, there you go, that's all the Ocarina of Time child temples ranked and analyzed. I honestly forgot that these temples aren't nearly as long and in-depth as I thought. The next episode in this series will be me ranking and analyzing the adult dungeons from this game, but I don't have a good time frame for when it might come out. This episode concludes Zelda month, and I had a blast making these videos. I'll definitely do this again next year, and hopefully it'll be bigger and better. Seriously though, thank you so much for the support on the videos this month. It really just means the absolute world to me to see people watching and interacting with my videos. The best thing you can do to support me is subscribe, so if you enjoyed this video, why not do it? For once, I can actually be certain that the next video on this channel will be a ranking of every star from Mario Galaxy 1. I swear it's the next video, but that's gonna do it for me. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll be seeing ya.